welcome. I was gonna say welcome to what I usually do, but we're doing things a little bit different right now. So we wanted to, kind of switch things up this season of our podcast. And, if we can't always do like a full release video or a full podcast, like we have little snippets of kind of us just talking for a bit,
Yeah.
which we do anyway, and we're really good at. And so we're like, you know what, let's spend a little bit of time talking about the current events that are happening in the United States of America. Um,
Mhm.
and so I got that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna test this out and see, like,
Yeah.
talk about current affairs. I mean, it's not like there's nothing to talk about. There's a lot to talk about, Lisette. What do you want to talk about?
So, just to give y'all a context of when we're recording, so this is June 11th. So it's
Yes,
Wednesday, June 11th. So, if all goes to plan, it should be the next day when you're seeing this.
hopefully. Ah, that's
Hopefully.
true. Tomorrow.
Yes.
Ah,
So we're trying. We're gonna try.
trying. Yeah.
No, I think in all honesty, and if you have been watching the news, and maybe not the traditional news because they don't be talking a lot about what's going on, but if you are on any social media platform and you are looking at, I think there's obviously a lot happening in California, Los
Mhm.
Angeles to be exact, and I think there's um the ice raids and just the protests and also just the depiction of what's happening and the reality of what's really
Yes.
happening is very interesting and just from an outsider looking in and what people are
Mhm.
sharing and what we see are the current administration trying to say is happening versus the reality of what's happening. So I think there's a lot to dig in and not just what's happening in Los Angeles, what could be happening in other parts of the country and that things that are expanding and doing, but also just the way things are being portrayed is
Mhm.
very interesting. And I think we'll dig in a little bit into that. But we really just wanted to sort of acknowledge what's happening for you all to know where we stand with
Mhm.
everything that's going on. So it's a little bit of like our statement, a little bit of our statement to
Amen.
what's happening, and really just have space to bring this to light and have a brief conversation
Mhm.
between Martina and I around what's been going on and what we feel and what we're thinking and where we stand in all of it. Because I mean, as someone who is part of the Mexican community, as someone who has family and friends and that have mixed statuses and all these
Mhm.
things, I think it's important to acknowledge that what's happening is not just like makes me angry, but it also like just makes me really sad to see
Mhm.
it. Because it's like, how can we as just human beings be so cold and heartless, like to see families being torn apart,
Mhm.
and not even just the like ice raids and sort of ice picking up families and tearing them apart, but even to see like people that are out there protesting, and a lot of it is focused on in Los Angeles right now, and like to see people being attacked for just um portraying and using their constitutional rights to protest peacefully, like
Right.
it's just these are peaceful protests, like these aren't people out here rioting, and the fact
Mhm.
that we see the current administration wanting to like portray it as like, no, these are violent and then they're dangerous, and then social media is portraying a completely different picture of like people are just there protesting, exercising their constitutional rights and then sort of all these things. So it's just to me just very, again, maddening, very sad,
Mhm.
just upsetting overall, I think. And but a lot of the times also like just feeling very useless, like what can I do, or like how can I like do something, and how do we change anything that's happening in our country when it seems that those that are in power and those that are supposed to be like check
Mm-hmm.
and balancing this administration aren't checking or balancing anything. Like it's just like do whatever you need to do and we'll hope for the best at the end of the day. And it's like, how can I, as just a citizen of this country, really hold accountability to our leaders, to those that are in elected, officials, and but also like how do I, stand alongside those that are currently on the front lines and like and sort of like really trying to, whether it's protesting, whether it's, trying to defend those that are being, separated and deported, and like how do I prepare myself, like, we live in Chicago, like it's a sanctuary city.
I know.
um
They hate us anyway.
so like so it's sort of all these things. And but yeah, I think that's just really what's been on my mind and I grapple with every day of
Mm-hmm.
like how much do I disconnect because I don't want to become so,
Yeah.
you know, bombarded by everything and just feel the weight of it and just the heaviness, but also not be so desensitized that I don't stay on top of like what's
Yeah.
happening
What's
and
happening?
understanding and knowing and being aware of it. So it's a lot, Martina.
Well, it is a lot. And this statement here ain't gonna make it any better, but Father's Day is this Sunday. And you
Mm,
mentioned families being ripped apart. You know, imagine how many
yeah.
children and fathers
Hmm.
they won't get a chance to see their children or they won't get a chance to see their father. Even if the father is still here in this country. Like
Yeah.
oh hell, some people probably don't even know where their people are.
Yeah. No.
Have they been deported or are they still here? Like like we mentioned, the checks and balances in this country
Yeah.
are, I mean, they've been out the window for quite some time. And I don't want nobody coming for me and saying, oh, well, we didn't say this when such and such presidents. I'm talking about where we at right now. This
Right
is
now.
current
Yeah.
events in 2025 in June. Um, but you don't have to get LA showing out. I ain't mad at them.
Yeah.
I'm like, I will say, I'm like New York and Chicago. I'm almost like, what we gonna do? But Lord, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because when you have the president calling in, what are these, the Marines or who
The Marines,
called in?
we start with the National Guard,
National
like we
Guard. That's
federalized the National Guard, and then, but there are Marines on the
the
ground
Marines there.
as well.
I feel like I
Yep.
did see an article say something about Marines. And I
Yep.
was like, and I've been hearing too about like I've been hearing from the Black community in a way too, like, boy, if we show up, they really gonna like it's gonna get really bad. And I don't, personally don't know how many Blacks are participating in these different protests or whatnot,
Yeah.
but it did make me think because I know we've talked about on here before about like, you know, this isn't our fight or like, just
Mhm.
kind of being here and not actively participating. But I do think that with this administration, and it is something about this country that they just don't like African Americans. I won't say other blacks. I think because African Americans and other blacks often get put together.
Yeah.
Everybody here is not from Africa. The people don't come from Africa. But there's this country and African Americans particularly. And I do think if African Americans become more involved in this, I think this is going to be catastrophic because I think our president is really just going to use that to set shit off. And
Mm,
this is why I'm like, oh, LA's showing out. And I kind of want us to show out too, but I'm like, I don't know. Because like you said, we're already in a sanctuary city, and this administration hates liberal cities. And
hmm.
LA's a very liberal city, so it's New
Yeah.
York and Chicago. And so, you know, we're the top three biggest cities in the country. And so I am just waiting for some shit to pop off in Chicago and New York. I don't want that. But I do think, when I think of like in the past, look at the 60s and the 70s, and a lot of this is these things where again history is repeating itself, like
Yeah.
we haven't learned. And it's repeating itself. And I'm like, is LA really just the start of things, honestly, or is
Hmm.
it going
Yeah.
to, you know we have so many different people that are wrapped up in this fight. And again, I think right now the focus is on LA. It's on
Yeah.
the
That's it.
Hispanic Latino community right now. And this immigration, I was telling Lisette earlier, this process of how they're going about things is just fucking horrible. even if you don't want people in this country, which it shouldn't matter what, because I've been hearing this on all those social media. How are you gonna tell people they're not a citizen on stolen land? It's kind of true. It honestly,
Yeah.
nobody here is from here but the Native Americans
Yeah.
originally. So you have like, how you really gonna sit here and say, oh, you got to go back to your country, and to tell people that who are citizens born in this country, people are
Hmm.
being snatched up and put into detention centers and sent back to a country they know nothing about because they were born here. Like they might, just give an example, they might be from Guatemala, love the heritage, great, but they may not know anything about Guatemala. You have people that are being snatched up and
Yeah.
forced back into a country that they might think, like, it's just like this to me is just, it's hard to kind of put into words the idiocy. I'm trying to say idiot. What's that word? I'm trying to connect it. It ain't connecting right now.
Yeah.
Idiotic. Let's go with idiotic.
Let's do
We do
that.
that one. And I just think this is just idiotic, and it goes to show what fear these
Yeah.
this is happening because of fear. And it's what happens when a group of people, I'm going to say white people, particularly white straight males, not
Mm.
all of them are straight, but we are in Pride Month, so I'm gonna focus on the straight males right now. Um, this is what happens when you see their fear of
Mm.
just something's different, something is unknown. And again, for me, like I've said on here countless times, as for me, it's kind of a hard pill to swallow because I don't have to identify with you to understand what you're going through.
Yeah.
And again, maybe because I'm black, maybe because I'm a woman, because I'm from the South. I don't know. It could be a number of different things. But we see how white people in this country are dealing with fear. And where the rest of us, because we're all the minorities, we've always had to deal with the fear. One thing I've can't remember where I heard this, but it was somewhere along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing, is that, and it might have been on TikTok, this woman, and this was related to like men and women, how women watch true crime, and how women
Mm.
know a lot about how to protect themselves or invest a lot about in protecting themselves and
Yeah.
knowing how to be able to do that. And this woman, she was talking to talking to a guy, and he was just kind of fascinated about that. And she's like, well, I have to know my enemy. Like, essentially, that's how I'm being treated, like an
Mm.
enemy. So I need to know everything about you so I can know how to survive. And I think for us minorities, we have always kind of lived in fear, but we know a lot about white people because, in a way, we have to know a lot because we have to be able to survive. White people, I think, sometimes that doesn't even phase them. And all this to say, I'm just saying this all has to do with the fear that a
Yeah.
lot of people are going through. And they don't realize the fear that other groups of people have
Yeah.
gone through. And I think some people do know that. They just don't want to acknowledge it. And this whole thing, well, I don't care until it happens to me. Girl, just like, did you see? I don't know if I sent it to you. The Latinas for Trump. Girl, have you been seeing
No,
this?
I don't think you sent that to me.
It's just been, if I didn't, I have to send it to you. I didn't know there was a Latinas for Trump out here.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did not know that.
Yeah.
And that to me was like, what? I don't understand it because again, it's like, and the people, who are basically that are Latino or Hispanic that did vote for him and
Yeah.
may or may not have family members who are immigrants who still waiting to, be established as a citizen in this country, even if they are, they're like, this is not going to impact me. This ain't going to impact my family. What are you talking
Hmm.
about? This ain't going to impact me.
Yeah.
And I was like, now what do you think makes you different from, let's say, the family down the street in the same situation?
Hmm.
Didn't vote for Trump. What
Yeah.
makes you different? Because they snatching up people who are citizens.
Yeah.
Is they not caring? And this
Yeah.
is it's just, I was like, I can't comprehend it. And I'm so tired of hearing it, but it's true. People voted against their own interest.
Yeah.
It's for what? To like, I just, for what? I don't, the appeal of this for people that are not white, so us minorities, I don't know the appeal of this administration for somebody to have voted for
Mm.
him. I don't. I don't get it. Because ain't nothing that could come out of his mouth would make me vote for him.
Yeah. You couldn't pay me to vote for him. Like
You
you don't pay
didn't.
me enough to vote for him. Like I'm absolutely not. And I think I've seen some of the conversation online and on social media about like, there's the two, there's the Latinos and Latinas that voted for Trump and sort of like, like either they're happy about it or they're like, it's not going to impact me. That's not me. And it's like you keep living on your la la land because that's all the fact that you think it's not going to impact you or that you won't be one that's going to be snatched up by ICE if they're just looking at if you look Latino and you might just like, you're being stopped. Like that's just the reality that could happen. And I think there's the other flip side of like the conversation that I've seen come up a couple times in social media is, well, they voted for this, and they're talking about like the Latinos that
Yeah.
voted for this, and like why should we show up? Why should we show out for them?
Yes.
And like all these things, and it's like it's a bigger conversation, right? It's a bigger conversation of like Latinos are not a monolith. We're not all the same. You got to look at Cubans, Guatemalans, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans. Like there's different, sort of Latinos. And I think when you drill down and you start seeing who voted for who,
Hmm.
you start getting a more clear picture of like where people were from and like who voted for what. And I think that in essence is sort of where the conversation tends to like
Hmm.
stop because nobody really wants to dig into Latinos not being a monolith, just the same way that the Black community isn't all the same. Like you all have like there's different beliefs and sort of even people that voted differently and all these
Yeah.
things. So I think it's part of the conversation. I think too of like you know how people use that rhetoric to also divide
Hmm.
minorities and even within our own things and sort of like, well, they all voted for this, and it's like no, like that you can't just kind of do all that and sort of say things like that. And I think that also then goes into sort of the fear, like I think you just hit it right on the head of like like it is all about fear, like the fear of the other, the fear of like the unknown, the fear of like a different culture, different people that look differently than you, have different beliefs or just different ways of thinking or ways of doing things. And I think it just the Trump's administration, just Trump in general, has just completely leaned into that fear and sort of just goes with that. And and I've seen like commercials and I've heard commercials on the radio of like you know this number of rapists or like immigrants and like
Oh,
have been
oh.
arrested and like they like all these things, and I'm like, yeah, and how many US citizens have also like committed crimes, and white individuals have also committed crimes and have done heinous things, and why aren't you pointing that out? Why are you only pointing things? Because if you look close enough, everyone has sort of has there's criminal activity across the board, and things like that. It's not just migrants and immigrants that you're focusing in on, but because you want to generate this fear around the other, again, it just people leaning into that and really kind of just letting it dictate. And again, like that's why we're where we're at. I think you have you know the governor of California having to be like, hey, like you're overreaching your power, you're doing more than what you should be, and you're like, hey, like this is abuse of power. And it is, and again, like I go back to just saying like how do we check and balance that abuse of power? Like, and I don't know the answer. Like I wish I did. But it's just, again, it's sort of like we just wanted to have this space to just
Mm.
share what was on our thoughts. We don't have answers. We don't have sort of the solutions to any of these things. But we do want to like acknowledge that, yeah, like it's not um it's not a friendly environment. It's a
Mm-mm.
scary environment. It's a lot of unknown. And and you don't know how to, some of us don't know how to operate in this environment and don't know what we can or can't do or things like that. And navigating this unknown is scary in itself, and I was having this conversation with some individuals of like, it just feels like we're seeing the erosion of our democracy in the United States. It's very much being tested and very much like being, just pulled and sort of like how far can we really, take this. But when you see traditional media not covering what's
Mhm.
happening or spinning it or just not putting all the truth out there, and you have to rely on social media to report what's actually happening, like that to me is scary. Like it's sort of like, and you add in things like AI that can
Oh God,
distort,
yeah.
truth and like all these things. So it's just it's so important for people to just be vigilant, for people to really question what they're seeing online and make sure. And, it takes that extra step of doing some research and making sure that,
Amen.
like just question it. Because if it just does not look right, hey, go do some, Google is still free. Like let's, let's do
All
some
it
research.
takes. Right.
Let's make sure that what you're seeing isn't something that's made up, isn't something that's, AI generated. I think and that's super important. Like even for me, because sometimes I'd be like, is this real? Like let me go to the comments. Let me start looking, and then you kind of see, or the next video is someone debunking whatever,
Exactly.
and it's like, okay, at least I know someone went and did the research and like went through all of that and is showing everything that. So again, I think just being mindful of things like that, because yeah, like AI has definitely taken over and can really distort some things for us. And I think it's just important to always just be questioning, to be, weary of like, okay, is this real? Let me dig into it. And just, bookmarking who you're really who are some really trusted, news sources that you can trust, and do that. And unfortunately, our traditional media um isn't it. There's a lot of news channels out there that are, in essence just bending the knee to the current administration, and sort of just, wanting to whatever, whether it's because of money, power. Oh, we've talked about this, money and power. People will do anything to keep it. And we are seeing it. We're seeing it in our politicians. We're seeing it in our, in media, and just,
Mhm.
and other people in power, whether it's um companies, corporations, other large organizations who are like not saying anything or not acknowledging things because they're afraid of what could happen if they did. So those are my final thoughts.
I would not to drag us out, but I will say I agree with what you were just saying. I think especially when you first open up with saying like, "Oh, people voted for this." I think that's an issue for me, and it really ticks me off. And then you kind of closed it with basically you got to research and learn for yourself. Like you said,
Mhm.
not everybody who is Latino or everybody who's Black or Asian, whomever, didn't vote for him. Yes, a percentage of
Mhm.
people within those groups did vote for him, but not
Yeah.
everybody. And so when
Mhm.
I hear people say that, you're just contributing to the problem. You're not even helping. So it's almost like if you ain't got nothing to say that's going to be helpful, or, then just be quiet. If you don't want to
Yeah.
go look it up for yourself and learn, because again, nobody can force you to do that. You have to want to do that for yourself. I feel people who say that, they don't want to go look and learn for themselves. I'm not saying that they're bad people, but you need to go and learn more. Like you said about the Latino community, everybody's not one. Everybody's not singular. And I know you and I have spoken about, there are Latinos that have been in this country for probably just as long as white people have. They've been here.
Yeah.
And nobody talks about them. Nobody
Yeah.
talks about those groups of Latinos, that probably do maybe have conservative, very
Yeah.
Christian or Catholic beliefs. We don't talk about, nobody talks about that. People just focus on oh, all of them voted for it. All of
Yeah.
them. Who is all? Because we got
Yeah.
the stats out there now, y'all. You can see the breakdown
Yep.
of which groups within these different minorities voted for him. And I would just say, people, again, you're just really going to have to learn for yourself. And I also understand people who are like, this is a lot right now, and people are tuning out. And you got to do what's best for your mental health because it is a lot. Just, for people who are in the struggle, people who got family or friends in it, allies as well. We know there are people out there that really,
Yeah.
white people in particular, who really are, in this with us. So I just want to say, I just do do the research for yourself. And we got a lot of work to do. We got a lot of work to do. But
Mhm.
I hope people have enjoyed this somewhat brief current event video. Um, and yeah, if people like this, I think we're going to do more of it. Like I think, especially like in between times, maybe when we don't always have a lot that we're posting, we might just have a few videos here, there. We're still planning on going live and all that stuff too. But yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. And yeah,
Thank
we'll
you.
see y'all at the next current event discussion. Bye bye.